This is Inspirational Women, a weekly series shining the spotlight on female trailblazers making a true difference in our community. Once again, here is Kate Daniels.
Now we have two staff members from Operation Nightwatch, a longtime community support organization for people who are unhoused. Shelly Dooley is the managing director, and Anita Hale is the development director for Operation Nightwatch. And we have an opportunity to be collaborators in a number of different ways. Shelly Dooley and Anita Hale, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the invitation.
I am grateful that you both said yes, agreed to be here this morning, so we could have an important conversation, as much as we can pack into a short period of time, about a really important organization here in our Seattle area, Operation Nightwatch, which has been here for decades, I know, and you both have a lot of heart and a lot of passion poured into this. So I feel it's really important to share what is happening now and even give this overview of what Operation Nightwatch is.
That's great. Thank you for your interest. I can talk a little bit about Operation Nightwatch, and then Anita can fill in some of the gaps that I miss. So we're a nonprofit organization that started in 1967, and it was very small, humble origin story where one pastor from a Mercer Island church was going into Seattle to help locate the son of a parishioner. And he found that there was many people in Seattle at night that were interested in talking to a pastor. And so he ultimately recruited other pastors to go out with him. So they would make regular trips into the city in the evenings and overnight and just do outreach, just sit and talk to people, get to know people, and provide a listening ear. And fast forward many, many years, then there was an opportunity for the pastors to go out with food and sandwiches and snacks, and they got to know people even more deeply, and homelessness was growing, and so they were more and more in need. Then we bought a building in the late 90s, and we were able to expand to what we do now, which is we have senior housing units, we have street ministry, which was our origins. We have 2 shelters, we have a nightly meal program, and we have a medical team. We see over 5,000 unique individuals every year, and 90% of those folks are experiencing homelessness, and most of those folks are sleeping outside, sleeping in cars, sleeping on sidewalks. And they come every night to get a meal, and then we try to develop a relationship with them. They get to know us. We get to know them. They know that we are a safe place for them to be for a couple hours every night. And then we develop that working relationship and refer them to our case manager, who can then help them navigate the world of homeless services.
And you say this has been now going on for decades, Shelley.
Yes.
And have you found that those numbers, well, we would hope they'd maybe be decreasing, but they're not?
No, they're not. So we don't have enough affordable housing in King County, in Washington State. People whose income is based on a disability payment of $950 a month cannot afford $1,800 a month for a studio apartment in Seattle. And so if we don't have enough units for people who are struggling, where they only pay 30% of their income towards their rent, then this visible homelessness is going to continue to grow.
So housing, yes, a big issue. And what we keep hearing is how rents and housing keeps skyrocketing in this area alongside this population of unhoused people keeps increasing. Part of it, I'm sure, has to be because they are not able to afford where they're living. And do you see that they become homeless as a result of that?
Oh, sure. Yes. Lots of people end up homeless because they were living with other people and somebody lost a job and then they couldn't afford to pay the rent. Or they were a home health care person and they were a live-in position. And so the person died, and so then they lose their housing. Domestic violence, that's a big one. Women can become homeless after domestic violence because they don't have the resources that are needed for them to stay in their home. So that's a portion of the folks who are homeless. Kids aging out of foster care is a huge portion of who we see as adults in the homeless services systems. Kids who grew up in poverty, had a lot of trauma, had really unstable housing, also is who we see. So young adults who have been on the streets and they don't have any family connection, they don't have that safety net that most of us were able to grow up with. Their family isn't stable, so then when they turn 18 or 19 or 20, the family can't continue to care for them, so they'll end up on the street. And once you've been on the street for a while, your trauma increases because it's very violent, it's very lonely. People are trying to literally survive through the day and through the night, and so then they may develop mental illness, they may develop a substance use disorder. It's all as a reaction to being out on the street and constantly in a traumatic situation.
Because this often, I think, gets turned upside down or sideways in terms of homelessness, people say, oh, they're drug addicts, so they're on the streets. But with what you're saying, and with some understanding I have too, is that can result as a result of becoming homeless, that they turn to drugs and other criminal activity.
For sure. Yeah. So it can be a contributing factor to people's vulnerability to being homeless, but that's not the exclusive reason that they are homeless. They are homeless because they have not been able to find an apartment or a house or a place where they can afford that has the services that they have determined that they need for themselves that they can move into. Nobody wants to be homeless, no matter what the media says. Nobody wants to be homeless. People want to be able to live where they have the things that they know they need for their life. And when you're poor, you don't get a lot of choices. And everybody we see is struggling with poverty as well as homelessness.
And I think you said 5,000 people is who you see in a year?
We do. We see more than 5,000 unique individuals every year through our nightly meal program.
Right.
We see 150 folks minimum every night, sometimes upwards of 180. We have a very short window. We start feeding at 8 o'clock and we're done by 9:15. Our meal program is completely managed by volunteers. We have groups that come in every night of the year, 365 days a year, and cook a meal. So the volunteers come as a group. They plan the meal, they cook the meal, they serve it, they clean up, and then they leave for the night. And then they come back the next month usually. So we have regular groups that have regular nights. In fact, I'm cooking tonight with a group.
How large a group is this?
So minimum is 4 people, maximum is about 8, but we have some groups that have 12 people, which is a lot. So if there's 12 people, then the extra people who won't be in the kitchen can go out into the dining room area and talk to people and bus tables and pour water and just have that one-on-one personal interaction with somebody who is probably very different from who they would interact with in their regular daily life.
So we should talk about that a bit more. However, I would see about Anita, and volunteers are, of course, needed for that, but there's also funding in terms of providing the meals, the food that's there. Could you address those points?
Yeah, so we have staff that help our volunteers and make sure that everything stays coordinated on a regular basis. So we have a volunteer coordinator who's amazing, and she reaches out and makes sure that things happen on time, that our food deliveries come in, that our volunteers are trained and understand the way our kitchen works. So that's one position. And we also have a kitchen manager who makes sure that our shelves are stocked. We work with Northwest Harvest and Food Lifeline and the Meals Partnership Coalition. We're a member. So we do get food that way. Some of our volunteers purchase all of the food on their own. They certainly don't have to. Our volunteer coordinator works with them on menus depending on what we have at hand and in stock at Operation Nightwatch in our commercial kitchen. But some of them want to, so they do. Some folks come in and just bake desserts, like not even at dinner time, but other days of the week. We have high school students who come in on weekends and do projects like this. We have other groups that come together, from corporate groups to church groups to just groups of friends who come and do this kind of thing so that we have desserts on hand to give out. But our volunteers are amazing, and we have about 1,200 volunteers throughout the community that come and help with this. And funding is really important because it allows us to have these positions. So we have these volunteers, but without the positions, they would not feel supported. So the positions are really integral to feeding 150 people every night of the year.
So I'm trying to imagine the 150 people. So they all sit down at one time, do they?
No. We can probably seat about 60 people at a time, but they come in, they check in with our desk staff, and usually we know who they are. But if we don't, then we have a couple questions that we'll track. Where did you sleep last night? What kind of services do you need? Age, gender, race. And then they'll come in, they get in line, they get their meal, they can sit down, they can charge their phone, they can use the bathroom, they can kind of rest for a little bit, and then they leave. And then they go back to wherever they were, or they are part of our shelter clientele. And so then they get on our vans and our volunteers drive them over to our shelters. So we have 2 shelters, one for men, one for women, and each has a capacity of 20. And I think it's important to note that all of our funding is private. We don't have any public funding. And we do that, and Anita can talk way more about that, but with church partnerships, both of our shelters are on church property, and we have the space at a very discounted rate because the churches want to support the work that we do. One of the things that makes Nightwatch unique, although lots of organizations do this, but I think we do it really well, is that we really value the individual over the group. And so we're going to get to know the individual person. And we're going to work with the individual person, and we're going to find out what it is that they see they need in their life. We may see that they have blind spots and they may have unrealistic expectations, and so we'll point that out to them, but we will walk with them on the journey that they choose. We don't ever think of somebody as their addiction or their mental illness. We don't use those kinds of terms with people. We call them by their name. They call us by our names. It's a professional relationship, but it's a supportive relationship based on authentic relationship.
And with having this authentic relationship, calling a person by their name, really seeing them is so respectful. People in general statement, say that they're afraid to be downtown. They're afraid of, the people who are on the street. But is that ever your experience?
No. So I understand that when I travel, I'm in other cities that I don't know. I can see how people will feel that way, especially with folks that are outside. In Seattle, I'm very familiar with the city. I'm really familiar with most of the folks. And so I don't have that same fear because I have taken the time to get to know people. Mm-hmm. And I understand that an addiction is going to present itself in a certain way, physically, and how people are acting on the street, but that's not who they truly are. And I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I can tell you that people who are living on the streets are harmed way more than they harm anybody else. And so I understand them when people are feeling scared, but if you get to know somebody, then it's not scary.
I really wanted you to express that, Shelley, because that has been my experience too, is to see a person and recognize them as this individual, even get to know what their name is, smile at them. That, I've had a situation where I can see that a woman has seemingly having some kind of an episode, but as I come along and if I make eye contact and smile, it's like she calms down. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I guess maybe feels appreciative in a way, but has always been friendly. So I think it's so important for us to understand that these are human beings.
Yes.
And to treat them as we would want to be treated ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are not in this situation because they chose it.
Right.
And so many of our folks will come in at night, and the first interaction they'll have with another person is when they have come in to get a meal. And so if you spend your entire day walking around the city feeling unseen, unloved, all that does is continue the trauma, continue the sadness, and makes people's days even more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Anita?
Yeah, I was going to say also, Shelley said this really well about the fact that being unhoused is not someone's choice. So I was just thinking of a story that I know of someone who basically became unhoused because of medical bills. So they had some procedures done, their insurance was lapsed, and they just couldn't keep up with everything. They were living basically in poverty to begin with, and they didn't have that safety net. So they were unable to pay the bills. And one thing, it was kind of a cascading effect, which does happen to people. And they ended up being on the streets and kind of thought they would just be there for a short period of time. But it didn't end up being a short period of time. They ended up being there for a while. And the person actually that I'm thinking of ended up getting off the streets, getting some help, and is doing much better today. But I think that's one example. This is not somebody who thought that they would be in that place. It was an unforeseen circumstance that took them to that place. So, I mean, I know every situation is different, but I think that's something we should all wrap our minds around, because all of us are affected by unforeseen circumstances. You know, we can't see everything that's going to come at us. So I think just keeping that in mind when you're thinking about someone who's living outdoors.
There's two common statements that I have heard and Anita has heard over the course of our time doing this work that I really like to push back on. One is people should pick themselves up by their bootstraps. And sure, people should pick themselves up by their bootstraps if they have hands, if they have boots, if they have straps. So many of our folks don't have that. So they're starting off without the basics that they need to then make it to the next step. The other one is folks who will often say anybody can be homeless. Even when I was younger and I was living paycheck to paycheck, I would not have been homeless had I lost my job, or like this person Anita was talking about, had a big medical bill, because I had an entire community that I could fall back on. I was raised with a large family that didn't live in poverty to that degree. And so there was always somebody I could fall back on. My safety net was there. My church community, my family, my friends. Our folks don't have that. So they grow up with very little support. And so they will then, one paycheck away from being homeless is a reality. But again, it's a contributing factor to people's homelessness, not having family support, friends support, but it's not the reason that people are homeless. The reason that people are homeless is because we do not have enough affordable housing, truly affordable housing.
And that's where each of us has to really embrace what this is costing each of us. It's not them out there, they're homeless. It really impacts all of us, and we have a responsibility to really become involved and do what we can, which is why I appreciate having this conversation with both of you, Anita and Shelley, so that we underscore this and really make sure that all of us are aware and see what it is that we can do individually. We don't have to build the house, we don't have to provide all the shelter, but don't you think if each of us did something that we felt drawn to do, because I think we are drawn to do different things. If we were drawn to it, wouldn't we be so much closer to finding these solutions?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think learning more about the issue is a first step. So even just listening to this conversation and having some questions is a great first step. And then, go to our website, learn a little bit more about why we do what we do. And then volunteering at our organization, Operation Nightwatch, we have plenty of things for volunteers to do. We will keep you busy. But getting to serve a meal, getting to cook a meal, those are great ways to kind of come in contact with people that you may not come in contact with otherwise, and get to know someone's name, pour somebody a glass of water. These are all just connection points. I think as we become more connected as a community and get to know our neighbors, whether they're housed or unhoused, we feel a little bit more secure in our knowledge, and we find different ways to get involved. So I think that's the first step. Absolutely.
And don't you have an opportunity coming up really soon where people could really learn more and just have an opportunity to interact?
Yes. So Friday, July 31st, we're having a book launch and learn. We're going to be serving lunch, and we're also going to be showcasing a book that's written by Ben Curtis. He worked at Operation Nightwatch for 17 years, and he's written a new book. It's called Love Thy Neighbor, the story of Operation Nightwatch on the streets of Seattle. So you can come out and hear Ben talk about his new book, read some excerpts, and we'll also have, his book kind of encapsulates the history of Operation Nightwatch, but we will have street ministers that currently go out on the streets and talk to people, and they will be on a panel, and you will have an opportunity to ask them questions and hear about their work and why they do their work and why they go back time and time again and form relationships with our neighbors on the streets.
That sounds like a really important and actually exciting event to be able to have that firsthand experience to hear from people and to also get a copy of the book to learn the history.
And lunch.
Oh, and,
and lunch.
And lunch. Oh, and not have to serve the lunch.
That's right.
It gets served. So really wonderful to be able to take part in that. To get more information about how to volunteer, well, and also to make donations, how do people do that?
So you can go to our website. We have a donate button on the website. You can contact me directly. If you go to our website and you go to staff, I'm listed there, and you can reach out. You can call the office and ask us a question, all of those ways.
Right. And the website?
The website is www.seattlenightwatch.org.
Great. So we will repeat that again before we end, but definitely just a wealth of information there and to find out about the volunteer opportunities. In terms of shelter, you were mentioning, Shelley, that there are 2 shelters, and it takes funds to support these. I mean, it feels like, well, why aren't there more shelters? But it all costs money. It comes down to that, right?
Yes. And prior to the pandemic, there were more shelters. And then when the pandemic came, everything shifted. And so, and I won't get into all the details of what shifted, but we lost shelter beds during the pandemic, and they haven't come back. And so we chose to open up our own shelters with our own funding to help supplement what we were seeing that the city and the county weren't able to do. Our shelters are only overnight, and the public funding wants to prioritize 24-hour shelter, which is a great thing to have. We really believe that we need the whole continuum of shelter, from emergency overnight to 24/7 with enhancements, to self-managed shelters, which a lot of places do, to church-run shelters, staff-run shelters. We want to expand on all of that so people can start to transition. When you've been sleeping in a tent with a community of people for a couple of years, it's hard to think about just getting up and going and sleeping somewhere else with people you don't know, rules that you aren't aware of. And so it's important to have all of the options for shelter and to understand that it takes people time to make that transition. And they have to develop some trust with the organization that's running that, whether it's a church or us or another organization. And so for us, it starts with our street ministers. They're out on the streets talking to people. Then folks can come to our nightly meal program, and so they're getting to know us there. Then we can convince them, show them the shelter, talk about what a great opportunity it is for them, and then they'll get to they trust us, and so maybe they'll try it. And then if we have room in our senior housing, then and they're over 62, we can move them into our senior housing. So it's a really great continuum, and it works when the person knows who we are and we know who they are, and we've built that trust.
Right. And of course, all of this needs funding. And I think it's important to underscore that you don't get public funds, that it's all private donations. And that's kind of what you oversee, right, Anita?
Yes, absolutely. So our budget, the shelters are definitely not inexpensive to run. And as Shelley just said, we have opened them up since the days of the pandemic because of need in our city. So each shelter runs about $250,000 to run. And those are services that we really believe in. So I think if you want to learn more, go to our website, donate if you believe in the services that we provide. If you have questions about the services we provide, you can definitely send us an email, give me a direct call. I'd be happy to talk more about what it is about Nightwatch, what we do differently, why these services are important, why the continuum of services that we have, all of those questions. I would be happy to explore them with you.
And as far as donations, it is really simple to do because I think you can just go to the website and there's a donate button.
We make it as simple as possible. So you can donate in many ways. You can donate with a credit card. You can send us a check. You could do a stock transfer. Honestly, if you're interested in donating financially, we will make it as simple as possible. And we are a 501c3, so it is tax deductible as well. You should know that. And if you're interested in volunteering your time, which is also very important, we have a volunteer coordinator who would love to talk to you about that as well.
Because I forget the number now. There are a lot of volunteers that help out during the year.
Yes, over 1,000. So about 1,200 volunteers help out with our programs and services.
Shelley, any kind of wrap-up remarks about the work of Operation Nightwatch?
I think it's just really, and I know we've touched on it a little bit, but getting to know somebody who's different from you is really important. This political climate that we're living in right now is very tense and very divisive, and everybody experiences it, whether you're housed or unhoused. And trying to set that stuff aside and just get to know the person who's standing there in front of you is incredibly beneficial for those of us who are stably housed and for those that are not. Just making that personal connection. Approach somebody, tell them your name, ask them their name. Just ask them how their day's going. It's just a really lovely thing to do, and you'll get more out of it than they do, actually.
Yes, indeed.
And if you come and serve dinner with us, you'll find that you get probably 50 thank yous. And word on the street is that we have the best meal program, which is really funny because it's cooked by different volunteers every night, and everybody always loves it. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're doing breakfast for dinner tonight. Scrambled eggs and chicken sausage.
Ooh, that's one of my favorite meals
Me too.
for dinner, right? Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, well, that is so wonderful. Shelley, Anita, I'm just so grateful for these stories, for your compassion and dedication, the work that you do. And I know that there's so much more. And I actually do look forward to having another conversation because I think it warrants discussing this further, keeping it kind of at the forefront of our minds and hearts, and to talk about a big event coming up in the fall, right?
Yes, we have our big fundraiser, our fall fundraiser, coming up on October 15th. It's going to be in Seattle Center at the Fisher Pavilion. We'll have dinner. You'll get to hear from different people who work at Nightwatch, volunteer at Nightwatch. You'll get to hear from clients in our video, and you'll just get to learn a lot more, get a chance to talk to our board, staff, get your questions answered, and just have a really fun evening of connection with people while learning about an important issue in our area.
Sounds so perfect. Well, Anita and Shelley, thank you so greatly for being here and for doing all that you do for our community.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for being here this morning to meet these special guests who are doing so much to improve our life and the lives of everyone. Please check this station's website for the podcasts for more information about these guests, and please share the stories with your family and friends. I'm Kate Daniels. If you'd like to connect with me, simply send me an email, katedaniels@hubbardradio.com. And I leave you with this thought. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. And that is from Helen Keller.
Thank you for listening to Inspirational Women. Tune in every Sunday morning at this time to hear about those truly empowering the Northwest community, all for the greater good. Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women are a public service of Hubbard Radio Seattle.